Shalom everyone. We are continuing our limud of Sefer Yeshayahu. We are in the second half of the book that deals with Messianic Nechamos. In Perek Mem Aleph, we talked about how all of the nations and their kings were false and futile and powerless and ineffectual. And now Perek Mem Beis discusses the ideal king, and that will be the king, Melech HaMashiach, B'mheira V'yameinu. Again, I've noted a number of times that Chizkiyahu himself could have been Melech HaMashiach, but the generation was not worthy. So Yeshayahu might have actually thought he was describing Chizkiyahu HaMelech, but it turns out that this is ultimately going to be true only B'acharis Hayomim. Pasuk Aleph says, Hein avdi et machbo. Behold, my servant I will support. Bechiri ratzasa nafshi. My soul will desire the one that I choose, the Mashiach that I choose. Nosati ruchi alav. I will put my divine spirit. Ruach HaKodesh. The Rambam writes Mashiach will be a Navi, not as great as Moshe, but the language is Korev LaMoshe. And Mishpat LaGoyim Yotzi. And he will be my emissary to judge the nations. Now this can have two interpretations, either to punish the nations for their averos, though it's not so clear that that's the role of Mashiach. Some say that's the role of Mashiach ben Yosef. The other is, his greatness will be so apparent that even the Goyim will bring their controversies to him. In other words, not that he will judge them to punish them, but rather he will judge between them. So if England has a grievance against France, they will go to Melech HaMashiach to adjudicate. Now it mentions, and this might be a quality for a Jewish leader generally, Lo Yitzchak, he will not scream, V'lo Yisa, he will not raise his voice, V'lo Yashmiya B'chutz Kolo. In other words, the concept is Mashiach leads by persuasion, by teaching, by communication, not by screaming. Kana ratzatz lo yishbar. He will be gentle, which is why the Mishpat Lagoyim, I think, is difficult to say that it's going on punishment, because that contradicts the description that he will not even break a brittle reed. A reed breaks with a very light weight. He will not even break a kaneh that is already cracked. Upishta cheya lo yechabe. And when you have, when you light flax, it's very, the fire goes out very, very quickly. He will not extinguish even the weak fire of flax. He will not extinguish that fire. Li emes yotzi mishpat. But all of his judgments will be for emes. Lo yiche v'lo yorutz. He will not be tired, and he will not run away from the task, or yorutz means he will not be broken. Ad yosim ba'aretz mishpat u'l'tayrasai iyim yiachela. That he will ensure that there will be justice in the land. Now, does that mean Eretz Yisrael or even the whole world? Normally, Eretz often means Eretz Yisrael, but here it seems to be the whole world will live with justice, because even the faraway islands will be waiting for his Torah and his instruction. We're up to Pasuk K. Pasuk K is actually the Haftarah. It's not one of the 7 Haftarahs of comfort, but it is the Haftarah for Parshas Bereshis, the first Haftarah of the new Kriyas HaTorah, the Shabbos after Simchas Torah. Kai Amar Hakel Hashem. So says God, Borei Hashamayim V'Naitayim, who has created heaven and stretches it out. Reika ha'aretz, He builds up the land from the water. That's Roka Haaretz Alamayim, Vitzetza, and all that is connected to the land. No say neshama li'amaleha. Hashem restores the soul of those on the land, meaning people who are devastated and demoralized. He gives them back their neshama. V'ruach lahelchim ban. He gives a spirit to those who are willing to come. Ani Hashem kurasicha b'tzedek v'yachzek yadecha. I am your God who has called you in my righteousness, and I hold your hand. V'yatzorcha, and I will protect you. V'yatencha lebris am, and I will keep my covenant with you. La'or goyim, to be a light to the nations. Again, this is a very, very important phrase, that the Jewish people have a tafkid to be an or goyim, a light unto the nations. So maybe it's more famous in English than Hebrew. And that means that although we don't encourage goyim to convert to Judaism, number one, Chasidei Umos Ha'olam, who keep the 7 Noachite laws, have a share in Olam Haba. And Bichlal, we discourage a person who wants to convert to be sure that they're sincere. But by the way we live our lives, we should create a Kiddush Hashem, so that other Jews and Goyim that see us should say, if this is the derech of the Torah, Kama Na'im Ma'asav. How beautiful are the deeds of one who keeps the Torah. So our mission is to have a bris with Hashem, so we become or to the Goyim. Lifkayach einayim ivrais, to open up the eyes of the blind. Lahaitzi mimasker asir, to take the prisoner out of his prison. Mi beis kela yoshvei chayshech, to take those who are dwelling in darkness out of their imprisonment. So the pasuk is a little shver because you can interpret it two ways. Is this describing Hashem? I, Hashem, will open the eyes of the blind, will take the person out of prison, or is it describing our mission? I made a bris with you to be an Or Goyim to do so and so. Now again, you can either learn it is going on HaKadosh Baruch Hu, or it's going on Am Yisrael, meaning our mission. But the idea that I will open the eyes of the blind refers not necessarily to blind people being cured, but those who are blind to the message of Hashem will find their eyes opened. Ani Hashem hu shmi. I am Hashem. And I will not give my honor to someone else. I will not let someone else be Hashem. I will not allow my praises to go to idols. All of the promises I made to the earlier generations, such as to Abraham, that his children will be taken out of the land of Mitzrayim, Hine bo, they happened. You can rely on me. The prophecies I gave about the past have been fulfilled. V'chadashais ani magid. And now I'm giving you new prophecies. But terem titzmach nashmi eschem, and I'm telling you before they come that they will come. And therefore, shiru l'Hashem shir chadash. Sing to Hashem a new song of praise, not for the old miracles, but there will be new miracles that will even be greater. Tilaso miksei haaretz. His praises will be said from all ends of the earth. Yerdei amum layai, those who go into the fullness of the sea, Iyim, the faraway islands, v'yashveim, Yisu, Midbar, v'yarav, Chaserim, Teshev, Kedar, in the desert, in the desolate areas where the Kedar lives. Kedar is a son of Yishmael. the Bedouins, Yareinu Yeshvei Sela, those who live in the rocks shall sing. Meireish Harim, from the tops of the mountains, Yitzvachu, they will call out. Rashi says those who dwell in the rock refer to the Mason, those who died already. And this is a remez to Techias HaMesim. And when that comes, even the Mesim, right? Lo HaMesim Yahalaluka, but by Techias HaMesim, the Mesim are alive and they will praise Hashem. Yosimu Hashem Kavait. All will give God honor and glory. Tilaso Be'im Yagidu, they will proclaim His praises even in the faraway islands, Australia, New Zealand. Hashem ke Gibor Yetzeh. Because when He reveals Himself, He will come out like a great hero. Ke ish milchamot yoyer kina. He will arouse with jealousy, meaning kaviyachol. Kaviyachol. It's as if Hashem is jealous against the Umites and will fight with them. But again, it refers to the strength and intensity of Hashem's milchama. Yariah af yatzriach. Yariah, he will, like a trua, he will shout. Yatzriach, he will cry. Al oivav yiskaber, he will become victorious over his enemies. So this, again, is this describing Hashem when Mashiach comes? Is this describing the pre-Messianic war of Gog and Magog? On one hand, we portrayed Mashiach as the opposite of a warrior, quiet, edel. So this might be talking about the pre-Messianic war of Gog and Magog. And if you say, says Hashem, why did you keep us waiting so long? Hashem answers, Hecheshesi me'olam. You're right. I was silent, me'olam, for a very long time. Acharish, I was quiet. Esapak, I held myself in. But no more. Kayeleda efe eshaim v'eshav yachad. Like a woman shouting in labor as the baby is about to be born. I will breathe out and yell and shout at the glorious creation of new life. And Achariv Harim, I will destroy the mountains and the hills. I will dry up their grass. I will turn the rivers into islands of land. Agamim Ovish, and the pools of water will be dried up. Right, Hashem is speaking. V'holachti Ivrim Baderech, and I will take the blind on the road that they never knew before. B'nesivais lo yadu adrichem, I will lead them in pathways that are unfamiliar. So here Rashi does say the blind are not those who are physically disabled, but those who didn't know the way of God. They weren't makir the Torah. And Hashem says, I will take these blind people and I will show them the way. Osim machshach lifneim laor, the darkness in front of them will be turned into light. Umak hashim lemishor, and the crooked roads will be made straight. Eila hadvarim asisim, these are the things I will do. V'lo azaptim, I will not leave them. So again, this seems to correspond with a very important teaching of the Rambam. Again, it's based on a Sugi in Sanhedrin, where the Rambam says, it's machlekes in the Gemara, but the Rambam says, Ein Yisrael Nigolin Ela B'tshuva. The Jewish people are going to be redeemed only if they do tshuva. If the Jewish people do not do tshuva, they're not going to be redeemed. That sounds bad, but then the Rambam says, Kavar hifticha Torah. But the Torah gave us a promise. that biacharis hayomim, Am Yisrael will do tshuva. So kasha, how can Hashem make a promise? We will do tshuva. Isn't there a klal? Everything is in the hands of heaven. Hakol bidei shemayim, chutz meyiras shemayim. I'll leave that as a question. It is a very good question. But it seems that the Rambam's Yesod is what this pasuk is saying. When the time comes, Hashem says, I myself will take the blind and I will bring them on the road that they never knew. And the darkness will become light. And the crooked path that they may have been following will now become a straight path. Because I've never left them. Nasaigu achor yevoshu baishes, habaytchem bepesel. And those nations that put their trust in a pesel, in an idol, they will be cast backwards, pushed away. They will feel shame. Ha'imrim l'masecha, those who said to an idol, Atem Eloheinu, you are our God. And now Yeshayahu is talking about his present generation, many of whom are taka not keeping mitzvahs, or they're of the Avodah Zarah. Hachershim shemo. You people who are deaf to my message, listen. Ha'ivrim, you are blind to what I'm trying to show you. Habitu liros, look. Mi iver kiim avdi v'cheresh kamalochi yeshlach. So, the Navi is saying, in kind of a lot of pain, who is more blind than my servant? Who is more deaf than the messenger that I'm sending? Mi iver kimishulam. Who can be as blind as he who could have been perfect? V'iver, who is so blind as the Eved Hashem? So, this is kind of the tragedy here. And that is, Klal Yisrael were made to be the special miyuchadika avodim of Hashem. They were made to be Hashem's messengers on earth, to proclaim His Kedusha and His greatness. They were the ones that were closest to God. Their neshamas were given the greatest capacity for Kedusha. And yet, they are the most blind and the most deaf to the very message that they were created to convey and that they have the greatest capacity to convey. Who is as blind as my servant? Who is as deaf as the people I sent to communicate this truth to the world? Now, some Mefarshim say there's a slightly different nuance. This is actually a teichacha to people, not who could have been tzaddikim. This is a teichacha to people who aren't tzaddikim, but they don't care about others. Meaning to say, they are perfect, they are righteous, but they are blind and deaf because they don't realize what is going on around them. So that's a very different message. According to the first pshat, the Musar is to the Klal Yisrael who had the potential for greatness and squandered it. According to the second, it is actually referring to tzaddikim who don't care about the door. So there are two very different pshatim. Is it addressed to the non-righteous Jew or the righteous Jew who does not have a concern for the door? And as I mentioned before, that is why Avram was called Avram Oavi, Avram who loved me, precisely because he was willing to be mavater on his own ruchnius in order to help others. Ra'os rabbis v'lo yishmor b'koach einayim v'lo yishma. They see so much and they don't notice it. They can open their ears and they still don't hear. Again, the two pshatim, either every yid has such a capacity and they ignore it, or the tzaddik is certainly aware of things, but chooses not to get involved. And then the next pasuk, pasuk Chaf Aleph, is a famous pasuk that we recite every day in Shachris, in Uvalat Tzion. Hashem chafetz l'man sidko, yagdil Torah v'yadir. But God desired, because of His righteousness, that Torah should be great and mighty. So according to Rashi, this fits very well, because the musar of the preceding pasuk is, it's not enough for you to be a tzaddik, it's not enough for you to be righteous and sit in your 4 amos. You're blind and you're deaf to the needs of the generation. You must go out and teach Torah and teach mitzvos to the Yidden who are not on that derech. And then the pasuk says very nicely, because it's Hashem's desire that the Torah be as broad as possible. And when you don't care about others, you are preventing the expansion of the Torah. Right? That would be the connection of this pasuk. So according to that, Sidko means because of Hashem's righteousness, He wanted the Torah to be available to everybody. That was a chesed of Hashem. The Gemara in Makkos has a slightly different nuance. Ratza Kadosh Baruch Hu l'zakos es Yisrael. Hashem wanted to give us many zechuyos. And that's why He gave us so many mitzvahs. So even if a Yid doesn't do this mitzvah, he can get sechar by another mitzvah that he likes to do. So according to that, the translation is, Hashem desired to give us, to make us pure and righteous. And that is why He made such a large Torah, that in 613 mitzvahs, there'll vadai be some mitzvah that you'll enjoy doing and you will do with gishmak. Right? So that was God's desire, that the Torah should be expanded, both in terms of number of mitzvahs and in terms of people being connected to the Torah. However, that is Hashem's vision for the Jewish people, but Yeshayahu says that's not going to be the short-term reality during the Gullus. V'hu am bazuz v'shasui. The Jewish people in many, many times will be a plundered nation. Bazuz, shasui, again, they will be plundered and terrorized. Ubebate kalaim hachbo, they will be hiding in prisons. They'll be hiding in dark houses. Think about the Holocaust. Jews are hiding from the enemy. Hayu levaz v'ein matzil, they will be a plunder, and no one will seem to be able to save them. Mishisa, again, the same lashon of plundering. Hayu lim shisa, or trampling. Mishisa is trampling. Ein omer hashev. And no one other than God will be able to say, go back home. Meaning, Yeshayahu was saying there are going to be hard times. We cannot deny the reality of the hard times of Yidden. Mi bachem yazin zais. But anyone that hears about these difficulties, yakshiv v'yishma liachor, should also think about the long-term future. Mi nasan l'meshisa Yaakov. Who made Yaakov to be trampled on? V'Yisrael l'baizazim, and the Jewish people to be a source of plunder. Who did it? It's not the power of Babylon, Greece, and Rome. Hello, Hashem. It is also Hashem's gezerah, zuchatanu lo, because we sinned against Him. V'lo ava b'dracha, we did not want to follow His ways. Haloch, v'lo shama b'toraso, v'yishbach alav chema, apo, v'yezuz milchama, and therefore He poured upon us His anger. V'atlateo misaviv, He burnt us around, surrounded us with fire. V'lo yada, and we didn't know how to control it. V'tiv rabbi v'lo alev, and even when the fire is burning, we still don't pay attention. The Gemara says that Rabbi Yishmael, when he was a young man, young boy, was captured by the Romans. And when Rabbi Yeshua came to ransom him, he wanted to know. He saw that Rabbi Yishmael was exceptionally beautiful, but he wanted to know if spiritually he was Kadesh. So he quoted the first part of the pasuk: "Mi nasan lemeshisa Yaakov, v'Yisrael lebeizazim." Who made Yaakov trampled upon, and who made Yisrael a nation that others plunder? First half of the pasuk. Yishmael, the young boy, said, "Hello Hashem, zu chatanu lo." So even in his own suffering, number one, he knew the pasuk, but number two, he responded with the idea that the onshim come from Hashem. And because of this, the Rabbi Yeshua said, "Muftachani, I am sure that he will grow up to be a Meirah Rabbi Yisrael. He will be a posek in Am Yisrael, a leader in Am Yisrael." And he became the great Rabbi Yishmael Kohen Gadol, who tragically died as one of the Asara Harugei Malchus, but he did grow up into maturity. And this is Zu Hashem Chatanu Lai.